Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It is Thursday, the 30th of June. Please make sure you are using headphones and that you are in our classroom. It's very important that we not go to a public place to join this class. Thank you so much. All right, Thursday. Let's talk about the rest of the week. Well, today we have a few things to do. You have a discussion to complete. And also on Friday, you know what's coming. We've got Unit 1 final, uploading your slideshow or sending me a link. Make sure the link is accessible. The link must be public. If your link is not public, I cannot see it, okay? So please make sure to do share and make it public. And then the final thing to do is to record that poverty presentation. Yes, you're going to be recording a video right here on Canvas. I talked about this on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. If you need to review how to do that, please look at yesterday's lecture video. All right. Let's begin. All right, folks. We are going to start with a little listening exercise. So listen closely.
So what about America? If you lose your job, what happens?
Well, we have what you have. It's not called the dole, though. It's called welfare. And basically what happens is if you lose your job, you can get money from the government, but it's really short term. I think it's only 6 months or a year. But the biggest difference, I think, between Europe and America is the word. We call it welfare. And welfare is really negative. If you tell somebody that you're on welfare or even on unemployment, then people really look at you negatively. Well, actually, let me clarify. There's welfare, which is kind of more long-term, like if you have children, and then there's unemployment, which is money you get from the government if you don't have a job. If you're on unemployment, it's not as bad, but people still kind of look at you like you're a loser, that you should go out and find a job. And if you're on welfare, it has a really negative connotation. People look at you like you're just lazy, basically.
Is that true if you're in a community where like the majority of people are on welfare? Are there any places like that in America?
Yeah, there are some really impoverished areas that have a lot of people on welfare, and I imagine that they probably look at it differently. But I think maybe deep down they probably wouldn't want to be on welfare. I mean, the main problem is those people probably weren't given the same quality of education. They don't have the same job opportunities. So deep down they probably wish they had a better job, but they don't, so they're kind of stuck in this vicious cycle that keeps them down. So I think that there might even be resentment, and because they have resentment for basically the terrible hand they've been dealt in life, they look at welfare almost like an entitlement because that's basically the predicament they've been given.
Yeah, that sounds similar to areas of Britain with like extreme deprivation. There's places like that where 3 generations have been on the dole sort of thing. Another problem is for single mothers. Sometimes the cost of childcare means that it's not actually worth them getting a job. Is it the same in America?
Yeah, definitely. And we don't have any government-supported childcare. And actually, there's been instances where law enforcement people like sheriffs or police officers have said that they actually prefer that some single mothers are on welfare because if they're not, then it leads their children to be more susceptible to crime or to life in crime. So if they don't have a strong parent figure at home, it could really have effects, later on in life. So it really is kind of this vicious cycle for single mothers in poor areas that they don't have child care, they don't have education, they don't have job opportunities, and so it's kind of really hard for them to get out, and they feel almost hopeless.
Yeah, so it sounds like we have some things in common even though our welfare systems are so different. But I hope that these people, their children especially, can get out of this cycle.
All right. Did we learn anything? So we're hearing about the differences between government assistance in Europe and in the United States. I'm sure it's different in your countries as well compared to mine. In the slides, the slideshow, which I have made available to you on Canvas, we have a transcript of this discussion. In this discussion, the people used all of the vocabulary words that you learned to take your vocabulary quiz yesterday. I hope you did well. I'm sure you did. All right, let's keep moving through lesson 3. Folks, this is a global statistic, not for any one country. But the statistic is that extreme poverty means living on less than the equivalent of $1.25 a day. Okay, this is about 150 yen, something like that. Imagine living on that little money every day. All right. We have not used some of these terms so far in our study of this SDG. The first one, social protection, is what I referred to as government assistance. So one of the social protections that we have in this country is unemployment assistance. If you lose your job here, you can get some money from the government, like the man said in the conversation, but only for a short time. Yes. Dimensions. There are different ways of perceiving things. You can look at something from one point of view or in one dimension, or another point of view, a different dimension. In the conversation, they talked about different ways of understanding the same thing or different dimensions. Causes. Causes are things that originate other things. They are the reasons for other things. Social exclusion, this is the opposite of social inclusion, right? Social exclusion is when someone is pushed out, right? It's like uchi versus soto in Japanese. Someone is pushed out rather than being included. Vulnerability. You guys learned the word susceptibility in this unit. Vulnerability is very much like susceptibility. Okay, immediate, it's an adjective that means right now, right away. Whereas long-term means not right now, not right away, over a period of time, maybe a lot of time. Okay, folks. In the slideshow on Canvas, we have this reading. I'd like you to read this to yourselves, think about it. Think about it especially as you are completing the discussion for today, which we'll talk about in a minute. This is another dimension, right? This statistic is another dimension to the problem of poverty, in that more women than men live on less than $1.90 per day. Look at that. And 1 in 5 girls globally are growing up in extreme poverty. That's 20%. 20% of the world's girls are growing up in extreme poverty. On our planet, 830 million people live below the international extreme poverty line of $1.90 a day. That's almost 10%, you guys. That's way too high. Okay, let's talk about some barriers, some challenges, and some possible solutions to poverty. On the left-hand side here, we've got 836 million people still live in extreme poverty. On the right, build resilience of poor people so they can live a dignified life. Okay, we have talked about resilience several times this week already. We want to work to help to build up the resilience of poor people, helping people to be self-sustaining, not just building a house for them, but teaching them to build houses as well. The poor strongly rely on natural resources for their livelihoods. Natural resources are subject to forces that we cannot control. The common people like you and me cannot control these forces. So sometimes there will not be enough of them, like water and food. So what we would like to do instead is to promote livelihood diversification. If we depend on just one product, it's very easy for us to fall into crisis if that product is threatened. If we depend on several products, we are much more resilient to change. Okay, bottom left, poor people are vulnerable to environmental degradation, climate change, and disasters. Yes, that's right. The richest people in the world are causing the most climate change, but it is the poorest people in the world that suffer the worst results. What can we do? Adapt to climate change. Climate change is happening, but what can you and I do? We can adapt to it and reduce risks of disasters and shocks. Okay, getting back to what the United Nations would like to do with SDG1. We've got a list of the targets. 1.1, by 2030, eradicate, get rid of extreme poverty for all people everywhere. Currently measured as people living on less than $1.25 a day. That's right. So the world was somewhat on track to reach this goal before the COVID-19 pandemic came to us. Now we are not as on track as we were before. Do you remember the idiom on track that we studied earlier this week? Okay, target 1.2, by 2030, reduce at least by half the proportion of men, women, and children of all ages living in poverty in all its dimensions, according to national definitions. How about 1.3? Implement nationally appropriate social protection systems and measures for all, including floors, and by 2030, achieve substantial coverage of the poor and vulnerable. Okay. Nationally appropriate social protection systems. So social protection systems work very well in small countries like Denmark, for instance. But our challenge as human beings is to have them work at scale, at a large scale. Think about a country like India that has many regions, many climates, and many different populations. 1.4, by 2030, ensure that all men and women, in particular the poor and the vulnerable, have equal rights to economic resources, as well as access to basic services, ownership, and control over land and other forms of property, inheritance, natural resources, appropriate new technology, and financial services, including microfinance. Okay, remember we talked about building resilience. In 1.5, by 2030, build the resilience of the poor and those in vulnerable situations, and reduce their exposure and vulnerability to climate-related extreme events and other economic, social, and environmental shocks and disasters. You and I are witnessing climate change happening. Behind me is a picture of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, so called because it looks like a saw. Yep. In the Sierra Nevada mountain range, a lot of snow used to fall. The snow would melt and become water, come down to Sacramento, Davis area. We would use it to enjoy, to have fun in, to water plants, to grow crops, to drink, all of that kind of thing. But in recent years, we have had less and less water. So this is just one example of climate-related extreme events that we are all seeing happen in our world. 1.A, ensure significant mobilization of resources from variety of sources, diversification, including through enhanced development cooperation, in order to provide adequate and predictable means for developing countries, in particular least developed countries, to implement programs and policies to end poverty in all its dimensions. Finally, 1.B, create sound policy framework. Sound means strong. Sound policy frameworks at the national, regional, and international levels, based on pro-poor and gender-sensitive development strategies to support accelerated investment in poverty eradication actions. Why gender-sensitive? Well, because we talked about how more women are affected by poverty than men. Okay, let's look at some facts and figures. According to the most recent estimates in 2015, 10% of the world's population, or 734 million people, lived on less than $1.90 a day. It's shocking. Southern Asia and sub-Saharan Africa are expected to see the largest increases in extreme poverty, with an additional 32 million and 26 million people, respectively, living below the international poverty line as a result of the pandemic. The share of the world's workers living in extreme poverty fell by half over the last decade, from 14.3% in 2010 to 7.1% in 2019. This is good news. However, even before COVID-19, baseline projections suggested that 6% of the global population would still be living in extreme poverty in 2030, missing the target of ending poverty. The fallout, one of the results, the fallout from the pandemic threatens to push over 70 million people into extreme poverty. 1 out of 5 children live in extreme poverty, and the negative effects of poverty and deprivation in the early years have ramifications, results, effects that can last a lifetime. 2016, 55% of the world's population, about 4 billion people, did not benefit from any form of social protection. All right, that uplifting message signals the end of this unit of study. Now let's head over to Canvas and review what we need to complete today. All right, here we are with the final discussion. This discussion is due today. Please take some time in class today to work on this. All right, this one is called "The Story We Tell About Poverty Isn't True." Folks, you know, we have done a little bit of listening today. We're going to do a little bit more. Yeah, by watching this TED Talk. Now, I want to show you something that's very helpful when you're learning English. Let me click over here. Okay, so when you're learning English, oh my gosh, it's very helpful. This is not helpful. There we go. It's very helpful to turn on English subtitles. So I have English subtitles selected. I do not have Nihongo selected, okay? So when Ms. Birdsong speaks, I'm going to hopefully have English subtitles. There we go. Perfect. So why is this helpful to me? If I am learning English, why is this helpful? Because I hear the words and I see the words at the same time. It's like karaoke, right? You learn the words by seeing them and hearing them at the same time. So this can be very, very helpful to you in your study of English. Okay, so for today's discussion, you are asked to reflect. Mia Birdsong says, I'm tired of the story we tell that hard work leads to success because that allows those of us who make it to believe we deserve it. And by implication, those who don't make it don't deserve it. We tell ourselves there must be something a little wrong with those poor people, that poor people are a problem that needs fixing. What if we recognized that what's working is the people and what's broken is our approach? What if we realized that the experts we're looking for, the experts we need to follow, are poor people themselves? Why does Miss Birdsong think that the poor people are the experts we need to listen to? Is there an example that proves her point? How did her talk challenge your views of poverty and poor people? All right, folks, we're going to do what we always do. Write a response, like so. Write your response, post your response, and then respond. Please write a response to at least one classmate's post. And we remember that we are using the discussion English that we learned on Monday and Tuesday. Once you've done that, you're finished, okay? Don't reply to yourself like I did. Reply to another person in the class. After that, the only thing that you have left to do is to prepare your presentations for tomorrow. Guys, tomorrow there will be no lecture because it's all about you. It's all about your presentations. So please work hard. I know you're going to do great, and get everything submitted before class time tomorrow. And the next time you see me, it will be in person. That's right. I will see you after the weekend. Okay. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'll see you then.